Game over, man. Game over. Johnny.
You're gonna need a bigger potion.
So serious.
Roll out.
I am Iron Man.
This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast.
Welcome to episode 92 for November 23rd, 2014, and I'm JD Duran, and I am co-hostless this week as Blake Pertusic couldn't be here. He tried to be here, but last-minute logistics kept him from being on the show this week. And if you listen to our latest extra film segment, Brendan finally got to move to Nashville, but he's finishing up that, so he couldn't join us this week. So, that being said, I'm joined by two awesome guests, and first, I'll introduce Jacob from BCX Radio. Welcome back to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. And also joining us this week is the awesome and always entertaining DJ Valentine from the Simplistic Reviews podcast. DJ, thanks for joining me once again as well.
So much pressure. I guess I have to be entertaining. I'll juggle something. I know this is not a visual medium, but I am juggling swords that are lit on fire right now.
I can picture that in my mind, and it is entertaining. So, Jacob, again, thanks for joining me, man. You also were on our podcast where we talked about Edge of Tomorrow earlier this year, which was a lot of fun. In case people haven't heard of you guys or if they're not familiar with you, tell us a little bit about your podcast and where can we find it on the internet?
Well, you can find my podcast at bcxradio.com, and it's the podcast for fanboys with a life. And what that means is we're the show for the casual nerd. So you don't have enough money to buy, Titanfall as soon as it comes out. Every floppy that hit the comic book shop shelves, you're a nerd and you're into that stuff, but you got other stuff going on too.
Sure.
So that's our show, and we'll go wherever we want. The warning at the beginning of the show says we're not a nerd podcast, but we do reserve the right to nerd out whenever we want.
Which is perfect for me and why I love your show. It's perfectly fitting. DJ, everyone knows who you are, I'm sure, if they've listened to our show anyway.
Sure, I'm like the President of the United States, passing executive orders. I very well feel like it. I'm so popular.
Where can we find Simplistic Reviews on the internet?
You can find us at simplisticreviews.net, and our show is on iTunes under Simplistic Reviews. We are nerds, so I guess we nerd out all the time, but we nerd out in an angry way, so it's kind of like meta, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
no, it's called the internet.
Internet, yeah.
There you go.
So we're technically just the internet personified in people.
There you go. Well, I highly recommend both BCX Radio and Simplistic Reviews. They're both awesome. And thanks, fellas, for joining me this week on the show. We're going to be reviewing the latest Hunger Games and Mockingjay Part 1, the latest adventure with Jennifer Lawrence as Katniss. And going off of that, we're going to be discussing our top 3 characters from a trilogy. Yes, I consider Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2 as the same story, so end of discussion there. And for our discussion segment at the end of the show, we're going to do a new segment called InSession Film Showdown, which is going to be a lot of fun, I think. Maybe it will offend some people, but I'm okay with that. It's going to be fun either way. Before we get going into it, though, fellas, I'll toss it to you first, Jacob. How was your guys' week?
It's been great. And as far as movies go, like I said, for the bunch of movies this week in particular.
Yeah.
The TV, I don't know about you guys, but this fall season's been very slow. There's not a lot on or a lot good on, so I've actually been catching up on a lot of movies lately.
How was your week, DJ?
Pretty good. We did a commentary for Planes, Trains, and Automobiles yesterday, so I was like laughing and crying all day yesterday because Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is like one of the funniest, most emotional movies I've ever seen. It's like the biggest sucker punch of a film ever, where you're just laughing, and then the end of the movie happens. You're like, "Oh God, I've been laughing this whole time. I'm a horrible person," but I did love it.
Very nice. It's kind of interesting, Jacob, that you talk about the fall season being kind of slow. I've actually had a really amazing fall. I mean, if you guys haven't got a chance to see Birdman or Whiplash, I highly recommend it. I got to see a couple of small horror films in Starry Eyes and The Babadook, which I think is also amazing. So, I mean, and I've had some fun with some bigger films that I'm sure we'll get into, but I've had a really great fall season so far. But as far as my week goes, I had a pretty good week. I know, DJ, we talked about this on the extra film segment this week. and I got to catch up on the Harry Potter series. I had never watched any of the movies before, and I finally got to sit down and watch all 8 of them in a matter of like 2 or 3 days, and had a lot of fun with it. I'm a nice Harry Potter fan, I would say, and I have a bunch of reviews on Letterboxd if you want to go and check that out. So I know you don't like them, DJ. Jacob, are you a fan of Harry Potter at all?
I'm not a fan.
Okay, fair enough.
He's not a fan.
No, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't hate them.
Sure.
It's sort of like what I've turned into now with the Hunger Games. I don't hate them, but
Sure.
I'm not awesome. I'm not
Sure.
calling my kid Katniss.
Sure. I feel you. I actually did really enjoy them, though. But real fast, I guess, though, before we get into the show, the last thing I want to plug is our latest extra film where DJ joined me, and we did recap the first Hunger Games, and we also had a short discussion of Catching Fire as well as to prepare for Mockingjay this weekend. So, that being said, fellas, let's get into it.
And here we go.
Are you coming to the tree? They strung up a man, they say, who murdered 3. Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree. Are you coming to the tree where a dead man called out for his love to flee? Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree. Are you coming to the tree where I told you to run so we'd both be free? Strange things did happen here, no stranger would it be if we met.
You're listening to the InSession Film Podcast. This is episode 92.
There has been rampant speculation about what really happened in the Quarter Quell. And here, to shed a little light on the subject for us, is a very special guest. Please welcome Mr. Peter Malak. Peter, a lot of people feel as though they are in the dark.
Yeah, I know how they feel.
Now, so set the stage for us. Talk us through what really happened on that final and controversial night.
Well, first off, you have to understand that when you're in the games, you only get one wish. It's very costly.
You're alive.
All right, The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1 is directed by Francis Lawrence and stars Jennifer Lawrence, Josh Hutcherson, Liam Hemsworth, and the cast that we're really familiar with already. Now, DJ, I know you didn't get a chance to see this, so this is just going to be you and I, Jacob, carrying this conversation for this review. So I'll toss it to you first, man. What did you think about The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1?
Well, I thought it was, well, the whole thing, it's hard for me to just talk about this movie because I'd never watched them before. And
Sure.
To prepare for this movie, I had to finally watch the other 2. And so it's hard for me to talk about Mockingjay as its own thing because I literally watched the 2, went to bed, and then woke up and went to go see it.
Nice.
So they all sort of amalgamate into one movie. But trying to isolate just this, I thought the villain was pretty dastardly, and what was done with the thing that Katniss was going after the whole time, and how that happened. I thought that was really neat.
Sure.
The whole thing seems to be a message about media. But my only problem with that is I didn't feel like we get to see enough of what the people saw from the media standpoint.
Interesting. I do think it definitely has something to say about that. Before we get into that, though, I want to say the first thing that I noticed about the Hunger Games, or at least my first reaction to it, was when I saw Philip Seymour Hoffman on screen, I nearly lost it. Like, I'm really going to miss that guy. I really loved him as an actor, and he shows up kind of early, and as soon as I saw his face on screen, like, my heart just sank. And DJ, I know we kind of mentioned that on the extra film this week, but man, he just has a presence in this movie, and I think he is pretty solid in his small supporting role here. But that was just one of the first things that I wanted to mention is, God, I'm going to miss that guy. But overall, though, as far as this film goes, it's kind of funny that I was kind of talking about the Harry Potter series in our opening segment, because Mockingjay Part 1 for me is very similar to Deathly Hallows Part 1 in the Harry Potter series, in the sense that it's very slow. There's not a ton of action here, but it's
and nothing happens. Nothing happens in it, like Deathly Hallows.
No, well, you can argue that. You can argue that for sure, because there's not a ton going on the surface, but it's about the character building. And I would argue the same thing for Harry Potter Part 1 for that one as well. Is there's a lot of character moments in this. It's a meditation into the psychology of the revolution. And saying that, I think that this is perhaps the most thematically rich film yet we have for the Hunger Games. If you go into this wanting action, if you go into this wanting this huge fanfare, you're not necessarily going to get that. It's very cold, and it's more focused on the emotional layers of our characters. And to me, I found that really compelling.
Yeah, I mean, I'll shred you that. I didn't think about that enough. It wasn't DJ. It wasn't as boring as Deathly Hallows Part 1.
Deathly Hallows, that killed me. That movie killed me.
that was just a lot of running. It was like we're going to make our version of Lord of the Rings. Just a lot of running. This one, no, he's right. It definitely had a lot more. I mean, it's Act 1 and 2 of a book, you know? Mm-hmm. You don't really have a climax or an end to it. So it is just a bunch of Act 1 and 2, a bunch of building and setting the stages for the second movie that they're trying to market, make more money by putting it into 2 movies, i.e. The Hobbit. Yeah, I guess you're right. It's definitely slower, smarter than the other 2, because the other 2 had to gear up that first hour to get to the last hour where it's the actual Hunger Games.
Sure.
So there was a lot more character development. My only problem is I don't like the character of Katniss at all. Do you?
Yeah, I love Katniss. I think there's a lot going on with this character, and I think Jennifer Lawrence plays it an incredible way. And I don't want to go too much into the first 2 films because we have talked a lot about them before, but I will say for this one, not only does Jennifer Lawrence carry this film solidly, but we get more dynamics, more depth with this character than I think the first 2 films combined. And I think the first shot of the film sets that tone immediately as what we're about to get into, because the opening of the film is Katniss kind of by herself freaking out over this nightmare that she just had. And it immediately sets that tone, which carries itself throughout, that what we're about to get into with Katniss is more dark and gritty. And I think that really plays itself well into the heart of the film, which I think is rooted in sacrifice. And it kind of starts with Katniss. And we now see her in District 13, and we know that Peeta is in the Capitol. And there's this really interesting dance between the Rebel Army in District 13 and the Capitol. And obviously, the Rebel Army and the Revolution is using Katniss as the voice for the revolution. And for Peeta, he is the voice of reason that the Capitol is using as propaganda to kind of settle the rebellion, if you will. And I think that dance is devastating for Katniss, because she understands that people are looking to her for hope. But the more that she rebels and the more she kind of plays into that symbol of being the Mockingjay, she knows that it puts Peeta in more danger. And we see that struggle with her throughout the entire film, which I found really compelling. And it kind of raises this question of how would you kind of respond having this kind of responsibility when you know it's going to come at the cost of close relationships around you. And as much as they build her up to be this symbol and to be this quintessential leader for this rebellion, this movie showcases that really in reality, she is losing it. She is out of control. She doesn't have it put together. She doesn't want this burden, but she has to carry it. And I think that's what's so fascinating about this film, because you could take that idea, you could take that kind of exploration even outside of this lore and put it into something else, and it's still compelling to me if it's handled this way. And I think that's what's so great about this. It's not the action, it's not even the aesthetics or anything like that. I just love that exploration. And I think that's what makes Katniss one of the most compelling characters we've seen on screen all year, especially for this kind of film. You just don't get to see that sort of depth and that sort of struggle that we see with Katniss in this. I thought it was fascinating. I loved it.
I mean, I definitely got the reluctant rebellion hero vibe, but at the same time, there are times in the movie where they're like, I don't think she knows how much of a lightning rod she is. And I'm like, how does she not know that? She's stuck in a bunker with 20,000 people who they don't have video games to distract themselves with. All they have to do is stare at her at the cafeteria and say, hey, there's Mockingjay. And she wore a dress that looked like a Mockingjay. All she's seen for the last year is 3 fingers and that stupid whistle. She knows. I mean, how she doesn't know, I don't know. It's just, I find the movie slightly frustrating because I feel like a lot of times the message gets overblown by the marketing. Like, I feel like it got notes from the producers saying, asking them to dial it down a little bit. But I see, this is why I said, like, I don't hate the Hunger Games a story, because I do see the germ of a good idea. But at the end of the day, when the movie's over, I'm not necessarily satisfied. I find Katniss's character to be completely stiff the entire time. But she does have to emote, because they do want to hit those beats where, she's going crazy and she wants to be reluctant, and she's got a little PTSD in there as well, which I think is also one of the messages from the film. And so when she does emote, it's just explosive, and she does come off crazy. No wonder you think she's losing it, because she acts like it. One moment she's completely silent and there's no emotion to her face. The other moment she's freaking out, like she's in that One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest.
Well, I think she's fully aware of what's going on, and I think everyone around her is too. I think what's so brilliant about this character and the way that she is portrayed is that she's having to carry this burden, and she is aware of the stakes, and she doesn't want it. And I think that's the key to the compellingness of the character for me, is she was kind of thrust into this because she made a decision to stand up for her sister, and she is mostly just about survival. But in the middle of that, she had to go back, and then there's this exploration now with PETA, and I think that's what makes her such a compelling character. I mean, I wouldn't call her stiff at all. I think for me, she doesn't know how to handle this kind of situation. And who would? I mean, this is a character that is the voice of something that is way bigger than her, and she is having to become larger than herself. And she understands the sacrifice that is there, but at the same time, she doesn't want it. That to me was awesome. And that's the heart of the film to me. I think Mockingjay is rooted in sacrifice, and we see that not only in her leading the way with that, even though she doesn't want it, but we see the districts follow suit. And I don't want to go too much into that because there's spoilers there, but I would say a lot of those scenes later on in the third act with the districts especially, those are some more of the potent, enthralling scenes in the film that Francis Lawrence really handles in a pretty riveting way, I think, especially when we get to I'll just call it the raid sequence near the end of the film. To me, was shot very much like Zero Dark 30. I thought it was very riveting and very thrilling, and I think, again, we see how that sacrificial theme, it not only plays into the story overall, but also how it's just devastating for Katniss. Stiff would be the last word that I would use to describe it. I think she, especially Jennifer Lawrence, I think she played it well. And why I love Katniss. I mean, I would say overall there are some other issues with the film, but Katniss carries this in such a way, more than the first two films, that to me, it makes up for whatever other flaws the film has.
I wonder if Jennifer Lawrence doesn't put a little bit of herself into the role, because the whole time I'm watching it, the 3 movies, I'm still focusing on Mockingjay, but the all 3 movies is her getting thrown in front of a camera, and she went from doing that Winter's Bone movie to all of a sudden blowing up,
Sure.
And I wonder if she didn't see some similarities between herself personally and Katniss, the character, on that level, which the whole time I'm watching the movie, I'm wondering that.
Sure.
But no, I think even in the storyline, Katniss is very like, I don't know how to make friends. She's not very likable.
Yeah.
But then again, these movies aren't for me. And you're talking about, I don't know what I would do in that situation. Well, I obviously can't put myself in a situation of what would happen if I was the face of a national rebellion. So I have to sort of take it down to a microcosmic version of what's going on. And in those situations, no, I usually, whatever I need to do to accomplish what needs to happen, or there's a emergency situation, I sort of put anything I'm thinking on hold to make sure that's taken care of. But then again, I'm a 33-year-old man, and they were talking about a
Sure. And I can see that. This is definitely not going to be for everybody. I think for me, I just found the exploration of the characters in this one, while slow, it's very slow. There's not a whole lot of explosions in this, but we see a lot of inner turmoil, though, and a lot of inner explosions with these characters, which I thought was fantastic, especially when you're looking at Katniss and the way that she's having to dance with Peeta via the media, as you were kind of talking about, Jacob. I thought all of that was fantastic because not only is she having to fight against Peeta because Peeta is voicing the Capitol's campaign, but at the same time, she's having to find it in herself to not believe what this guy is saying because she knows him and she wants him to be safe. But there's a lot of danger always lurking around the corner with what is going on there. I thought that was just really beautifully told. And again, I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but there is a scene with Peeta near the end of this film that to me was just jarring. It was one of the freakiest, scariest scenes I have seen all year, and how that played into the Katniss character. Again, I don't want to get too much into it without spoilers, but man, that was amazing. And a huge credit to Josh Hutcherson too, because he has grown tremendously from the first Hunger Games into this one. He really pulled off, I think, a really fantastic performance, which I thought was pretty pivotal with his character. I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, I think he was probably the best out of the movie as far as performances go. And but being fair to everyone else, I mean that's his character had to go through more and had to deal with more complexity, I think. But I definitely think he was the best. He had the best performance. I actually thought I thought Hoffman's performance in the last one was better than this one necessarily. I didn't think he was. I mean, his character obviously was integral. It was very integral, but
sure.
I don't know.
Well, see, I thought Philip Seymour Hoffman was great. I do agree with you that he has more to do in the last one than this one. He's very much in the background here, but for me, I think he communicates a lot with saying so little. I think it's the little touches, especially with the little glimpses we get with the Julianne Moore's character. There's a couple of times where he just has some moments where he's trying to convince her of something, and he's able to do it in a subtle way that I thought was really great. I do agree with you overall, though. He doesn't have as much to do here, but I think he's fine in this role. I think he actually pulls it off way more than a lot of other people could, and I think especially when you compare that to like Liam Hemsworth, who also doesn't have a ton to do here. You could argue has more to do than Hoffman, and I think he more floats by in his performance than someone like Hoffman, who I think he does a lot with a little, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I wasn't watching it and thinking, man, I wish he wasn't in this movie. And I'm like you, when he came on the screen, I went, oh yeah, he was in this and he died.
Sure.
Which is fun too, because before the movie started, there was a trailer for the last Night at the Museum movie.
Oh,
with Rob.
Sure.
And I want to say there was another trailer before Interstellar where someone was dead. But anyway, I thought he did a good job. My favorite scene, favorite Philip Seymour Hoffman scene, and a scene that turned me over on another character, was his conversation with Effie.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Yeah,
that's when before I was sort of starting to like her when she was talking of, we're a team and blah blah blah. But then there was that scene where I was like, you know what, I really like Effie. She's just trying to get along. She's trying to get along. It's both looking bunker.
Yeah, and she also kind of plays into that sacrificial theme I've been talking about too, in the sense that she's having to sacrifice all those luxuries she's been used to for a long time. But yeah, you're right. She does kind of come around, and amazing performance once again. I mean, I really love that character. She's just a lot of fun. But all right, well, let's get into final thoughts and grades. So any other final thoughts, Jacob, and what grade would you give Mockingjay Part 1?
Final thoughts. I don't really have too many. I mean, it's the start of another movie, so it's hard to really give a grade because it's incomplete. So I would give an incomplete.
An incomplete.
He gets an I.
All right.
Finish off in the summer term.
Well, it's like when people would ask me what my favorite Lord of the Rings is, it's like, really, do you like the beginning, middle, or end of a movie? Because that's what this is, and that's what this is doing.
I can kind of see that. I do think, though, that there's a lot of material in the book that justifies two films, I think, very similar to Harry Potter. I don't want to get into that with you guys because obviously you guys don't like Deathly Hallows Part 1 as much as I do. But I will say that with this first part, it is super compelling, and I think it's going to be a crucial piece to where we go with Part 2, which is mostly going to be explosions and action. And I think this, from a character standpoint, is absolutely necessary, and I think it's done in a really riveting way. And once we get to District 13, I think it's pretty interesting because the previous films was really more about costumes and training sequences and the pageantry of it all, where this was more gritty and it was raw and it was political, and much like the other Hunger Games, it was a fight to the death, but now with bigger stakes. And when you add in all of the compelling Katniss dynamics, as we talked about, and all the Peeta dynamics, I loved it. And, with Katniss, she was very resilient before. She was very much you could say a badass in those other two in those other two movies. But now, as I mentioned, she's out of control and she's lost. And the antithesis of what a rebellion is looking for as what they want her to be on the outside in her appearance. And I think the transformation from beginning to end was compelling to me. It's about the characters, and I think that's what's interesting about this, and probably why I will like this movie more than Part 2. It's why I like Deathly Hallows Part 1 more than Part 2, is because you get more character moments. And at the end of the day, you want it to be fun for sure, but it's about the characters. At least it is for me, and I like those little touches. I mean, there's some really great throwaway scenes in this movie that I think adds to that. One other scene that we didn't talk about, Jacob, was a scene where they go back to District 12 and Liam Hemsworth's character is with Jennifer Lawrence in this house, and Liam Hemsworth is kind of poking some holes at Katniss as to her motivations and what she's really seeing. It's a throwaway scene. You could take it out of the movie and it's not going to hurt or help the film at all. But I think moments like that, I think, add some really fantastic dynamics to these characters that I personally love. I thought it was fantastic. So for me, I would give this, I'm in the B+ to A- range on this. I don't think it's a perfect film by any means, but to me, it's super compelling. I had a pretty good time with this. I mean, the next one will be more fun for sure. I mean, there's going to be no debate on that. This one, though, will have a lot more depth and heart to it that I really enjoy. So anyway, if you want to check out more of my thoughts on The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, you can check out my thoughts at letterboxd.com/InSessionFilm. And if you agree or disagree with our takes, you can let us know by leaving a comment on our Facebook page at facebook.com/InSessionFilm, or tweet us at InSessionFilm. You can also leave us a comment on Google+, or just email us at InSessionFilm@gmail.com. All right, the InSession Film Top 3 is next, and we're going to be talking about our top 3 characters from a trilogy. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey guys, I just want to pause for a quick second to talk about the First Time Watchers podcast. So we just got done reviewing Mockingjay Part 1, and I was talking a lot about how it's rooted in the characters that film is, and these guys are amazing characters. They're amazing. They're definitely guys you want to check out, and they're a great supporter of our show. It's a podcast you need to listen to. It's hosted by Tim, Walter, and Hermano, and these guys, they know their movies. Their banter is absolutely amazing. It's very entertaining, much like the Hunger Games series, in my opinion. And what's unique about their show is that every week they pick a movie that they've never seen before, they go and watch it, they come back and discuss it with fresh perspectives, and it's incredible. They also talk about trailers they've seen recently, other films that they've watched recently as well, and whether they would recommend them or not. They also do movie recommendations at the end of the show. It's fantastic. The show is very fluid. It's very easy to listen to. They have a lot of fun. You can tell these are really close guys, and they just have a ball on their show. So, that being said, you may be asking, where can you find them? And that's a great question. Well, there's a couple ways that you can find them. You can check them out at firsttimewatchers.blogspot.com. You can also hit them up on Twitter at firsttimewatchers, and also on Facebook, just search First Time Watchers. Please, in all seriousness, go subscribe to these guys on iTunes. Leave them a review. Let them know that we sent you to them. I promise it'll be absolutely worth your time. Again, that's First Time Watchers. You're listening to the InSession Film Podcast. This is episode 92, and now we're going to be going over our top 3 characters from a trilogy. Before we get into it, though, I'll toss it to you first, Jacob. Did you have any criteria that you looked at to pick your list this week?
I have some questions about what the criteria was.
Okay.
Okay, so, like, it's so hard to find a trilogy because everybody wants to keep adding on to a trilogy.
Well, that's the awesome thing about what we do with this segment is you can make up your own criteria. It's whatever you want it to be.
Okay. All right. Well, then I don't have any questions because it can be whatever I want it to be.
Exactly.
Fill in your own blanks.
Exactly. It's your own little criteria. All right, DJ. I think that pretty much nails it for Jacob. What about you?
Yeah. My criteria is Jacob is right. They do start adding 1s and 3s to something. So I was like, well, I'm just going to go by 3. The character had to be in 3 movies. If he's in 4 movies, that's fine. But as long as he's in 3 movies, I'm good.
Yeah, that pretty much nails it for me too, because there are trilogies out there with a 4th or 5th, maybe even a 6th movie that I just don't count. Like, they're just not in existence in my mind. So like DJ said, if he's in at least 3 movies, I count that as a trilogy, and that's good enough for me. So that being said, Jacob, we'll start with you, man. What is your number 3?
Well, because trilogy meant a lot more when I was a kid because they weren't adding so many on. The main thing was the ones that stuck with me from the time when I was a kid. So the first one I'm going to go with is definitely Marty McFly and Doc Brown.
Nice.
Oh, good one. That's a good one.
Great honorable mentions for me, yeah.
Yeah, I loved Marty and Doc. You know, Marty didn't really respect his dad a lot and didn't really like hanging out with his family. They were a bunch of weirdo nerds, and he was so cool. And, I mean, granted, it's weird that a high school kid befriends a lonely weirdo doctor.
The strangest relationship in cinema history, maybe.
Yeah.
To understand what their relationship is, you have to sort of try to surmise what it was off camera before the first movie started. I mean, Marty before school just shows up at Doc's house and plugs up to a big ass speaker. Why built that? We don't know. So it's like, Doc. How
did they first meet? Where did they meet? Was it they were at the mall or something and they bumped into each other? He's like, yeah, I like your hair. What happened? How did Marty McFly and Doc Brown first? It always bugs me. Where did they first start this relationship? Is he a friend of Crispin Glover? I don't understand.
Maybe Doc was a teacher and he went crazy and they had to fire him. I don't know.
That would make sense. Yeah,
that makes more sense.
Only us and the fan fiction community will ever know.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless the Mechas has to pay alimony again or something. I don't know.
That's pretty funny. That is a great pick though, and it's a very, very good honorable mention, as I said. All right, DJ, what do you got at your number 3, man?
I'm a huge Western fan, so Blondie is my number 3. Blondie, or Joe, or The Man with No Name, from the Sergio Leone classic, like the epitome of awesome, cool Western character. I mean, for me, I love a protagonist who has a plan, and Blondie always seems like a step ahead of everybody else in every one of those movies. And we never really get into his backstory, which makes him awesome, because he's just this mysterious guy that comes into town, does some crazy stuff, and leaves. But we love him. He's awesome. And even in his final appearance on film, which is essentially a prequel, Good, the Bad, the Ugly, he's hilarious. The comedic timing he has with Eli Wallach's Tuco is terrific. And I grew up with my stepfather. He has westerns playing, and I would climb in the den and watch them. And I was like, that guy was, even as a young child, I was like, that guy is cool. Smoking cigars, shooting people from ropes, and interrupting card games to punch people in the face and get the. He's just a cool dude. Blondie's is awesome.
Yeah, it's a fantastic choice. I love it, and that's all I'll say for now. For my number 3, I'm going with an amazing character, one that I think has made other top 3 lists of mine before, and I'm going with Samwise from Lord of the Rings. And what I love about Samwise and why I would pick him over Frodo and some of these other characters is I just love his honesty and his loyalness to Frodo and his willingness to go the extra mile. I mean, his love for Frodo takes him beyond his limits, and he'll do whatever it takes. And I think that in the end is why Frodo is able to succeed, because there's a couple times where Frodo is pushed to his limits, and if it wasn't for Sam stepping up, we wouldn't have found a conclusion that would have ended well for these characters. And that speech, I think that speech at the end of Two Towers, I think culminates that perfectly for me.
How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing. This shadow, even darkness must pass. A new day will come. And when the sun shines, it'll shine out the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. They kept going because they were holding on to something. What are we holding on to, Sam? That there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo. And it's worth fighting for.
It's amazing. It's very powerful and poignant and persuasive, because I think Frodo really buys into that big time. It's a great moment for those two characters, and I love the impact that it makes, and it made a big impact on me as well. So I love Samwise. He's one of the best supporting characters of any film or any trilogy I've seen. So I love him. Really well played. Samwise is my number 3.
And he has a really another weird relationship with Gollum. That's
yes,
the best part of Two Towers.
Yeah, I agree. Very, very good stuff. All right, Jacob, what do you got at number 2, man?
This is almost a given, but first off, we're going to keep it to the Holy Trilogy. You're
about to take mine. We're about to double up. Go ahead.
I'm probably not, because this is stuff that stuck with me as a kid. And as a kid, I loved C-3PO.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
We're not doubling up. Awesome.
Okay.
Everybody goes for Luke and Han and Chewie and Leia and Darth Vader and blah, blah, blah. But as a kid, I have to admit, I was just watching the entire time waiting for C-3PO. I don't know what it was about, slightly effeminate characters, but they really drew up fascinating with me.
We've gone from Samwise to 3PO, so it's fitting. Continue.
But I really liked how, this is You want to talk about someone being involved in a rebellion they had no control over?
Yeah, sure.
If it was up to him, he'd go the dark side just because then he could rap for 2 seconds. It was always R2-D2 who was, sticking his middle tripod finger to the man.
Sure.
C-3PO along.
That is an awesome pick. I don't think C-3PO has ever made a top 3 on this show before anyway. So that's pretty awesome. I didn't include Star Wars as part of my criteria because I've used a lot of Star Wars characters and moments before, but man, that's awesome. I love that as a pick. That's very good. All right, DJ, I guess you've already laid it out. What is your Star Wars pick?
Kid, I've flown from one side of the galaxy to the other, and I've seen a lot of strange stuff, but I've never seen anything to make me believe that I would leave Han Solo off my list. He shoots first, he steals kisses, he's got the fastest hunk of chunk in the galaxy, he's the quintessential anti-hero, a man had a life of honor and service for the Korean Navy. Then they just, kicked his ass to the curb after he tried to save Chewbacca, became a smuggler. And then he has this great arc where he goes back to being that honorable guy. Solo's the best. They had to shut down the new trilogy because Harrison Ford broke his leg. You want to know why?
Yeah.
You do not have a Star Wars film without Han Solo. You hear me, prequels? You do not have a Star Wars film without a scoundrel. Yes, I'm yelling at a non-existent entity. Yes, you need to have that guy who's just, he's bad, but he has that hint of good within him. And that's why I think Star Wars Rebels, the new animation, is so much better than the Clone Wars, though I like the Clone Wars because they have the scoundrel. They have the guy in there. They kind of combined Han Solo and Luke into one character because you need that guy, that cool, smug anti-hero guy. And that's who Han Solo is where who the hell did not want to fly the Millennium Falcon? Who did not want to sit next to Chewbacca?
Yeah, sure.
Did not want to roll up on Carrie Fisher when she was skinny and steal a kiss? I mean, come on. It's Han Solo, number 2.
It's a great choice. I've had him on several top ones before, which is why I didn't include him on my list or as part of my criteria. But yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with anything you're saying. I 1,000% agree.
Did you just go extended universe on us?
I went extended effing universe. Carillion military, blood stripes. I went there. Okay, yes.
Wow.
All righty. There you go. Very good stuff. Very good stuff, guys. For my number 2, I'm going with DJ's number 3. I'm going with The Man with No Name or Blondie or Joe or whatever you want to call him from the Dollars trilogy. And there's not really a whole lot, I guess I can really say to add on to what DJ said. I mean, I love this character. Very quiet, very gritty and eccentric. And there is nobody in film, especially for this kind of genre, that does stoic better than this character. It is absolutely incredible. Very strong, has this amazing sense for justice, which is a lot of fun, as DJ was talking about. And I just love the way that he sells it, not with his dialogue. It's never with his dialogue. It's always with his actions and his posture and his facial expressions. That's, I think, what defines this character and what gave us a really incredible new way of looking at the gunslinging genre. I just think it's awesome. So, and I'll just echo everything that DJ also said about it. It's amazing. So that would be my number 2.
Blondie, you know what you are? A no good, dirty son of a bitch.
Exactly what DJ just said.
You know what? Admittedly, the Clint Eastwood Westerns is something I've been meaning to go back and watch because I've never seen them.
Amazing.
Hop on them, man.
Yeah, amazing.
Get some Joe Kidd in your life. Get some Outlaw Josie Wales in your life. Get some Pale Rider in your life.
Yeah.
I have seen. Well, there are 2 that I've seen. I've seen Josie Wales and I liked it, which made me want to delve into more of it. But I have also seen like 2 or 3 times. What is it? Painted Wagon, the musical, Western musical.
You don't really need that in your life, but you can put it in your life. I mean, I don't highly recommend that one, but it's fine.
Yeah, those 3 films though, especially. But yeah, he's done a lot of great work. Anything
Good, the Bad, the Ugly is like a freaking a masterpiece.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about a guy who's given the reputation of making masterpieces later, but that movie, Good, the Bad, the Ugly, for the fact that it's a prequel and people kind of still don't understand that it's a prequel, it's awesome. It's always something new when you watch that film. It's great.
I would agree. It's fantastic.
It set a lot of the pop culture standards for Westerns. I mean, when
it changed that genre big time. Yeah.
When anybody ever thinks of a song from a Western, if I'm not mistaken, the song they come up with is the one from the showdown scene in The Good and Bad, or Fistful of Dollars, one of those.
Yeah, that one.
I think it is The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
How many times have people, referenced the costume with the poncho?
Yeah, absolutely.
Groundhog's Day mentioned it.
Yeah,
or used it. So
exactly.
Yeah.
By the way.
Very good stuff. All right, Jacob, give it to us, man. What is your number one?
Again, kids and older trilogies. Though these aren't really kids' movies, but that just shows what kind of child rearing was done to me. And that is Ash from the Evil Dead.
Oh, nice.
Ashley, help me. Let me out of here. Ashley? Ash, help me. Let me out of here. I'm all right now. I'm all right now, Ashley. I'm all right. Unlock this chain and let me out.
I'm all right now, Ashley. Come unlock the chain and let me out. I'm all right now. It's your sister, Cheryl.
Oh, you bastards. Why are you torturing me like this? Why?
I loved Ash. I mean, my favorite one, especially coming from a kid standpoint, was definitely Army of Darkness because it was so much fun. And I remember coming home to my dad's. My dad had me on the weekends, and I remember coming home, and all of a sudden he sat me down. Like as soon as he picked me up, we went to his house. He already had 2 tapes from Blockbuster, and he made me watch Evil Dead 1 and 2, and then we went to the theater to go watch Army of Darkness.
Wow. Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
and you got to understand, my dad is from 80s Georgia. I don't know why he thought this was the movie that I would love, but because I'm not a horror kid either, but I did always like dark. And so that's all I can think of. And so, yeah, he took me, and ever since then, I mean, I don't even read, and I read Bruce Campbell's autobiography just because.
Nice. Nice. Oh, very good stuff. I have to revisit those. I haven't watched them in a really, really long time.
You better, because they're about to turn it into a TV show.
Oh, yeah. There you go. All right, DJ, what is your number one, man?
You call him Dr. Jones, doll. Dr. Jones, a.k.a. Indiana M.F. Jones, is the coolest character in a trilogy. Hell, he might be the coolest character of all time.
Hello, Marion.
Indiana Jones. Always knew someday you'd come walking back through my door. I never doubted that. Something made it inevitable. So what are you doing here in Nepal?
I need one of the pieces your father collected.
I learned to hate you in the last 10 years.
He made archaeology one of the most boring subjects in any quantum physics. No, archaeology may be the most boring thing ever. And Indiana Jones made it cool. He's a teacher. He's an adventurer. He's a ladies' man. He's a father figure. He throws hands with the best of them and can take a punch. He's funny. He's charming. He's Harrison Ford. He's named after a dog. How could you not pick Indiana Jones in your trilogy number 3, top number 1? I even count Kingdom of the Crystal Skull because that movie's awful, but it's not because of Indiana Jones. It's because of monkeys and refrigerators and nuclear bombs going off, and George Lucas putting aliens in there. It ain't Indiana Jones because he's still freaking awesome. George Lucas, I don't know why you would want to seppuku your first, you seppuku your number 1 franchise, then you seppuku your number 1 character. It's horrible. For as silly as people say the original trilogy was, it is smart. It's brutally. I mean, have you ever watched Raiders of the Lost Ark recently? Indiana Jones gets shot in the arm, blood squirts all over the camera. This is a PG freaking movie.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah,
He throws a Nazi into a rotor.
Yeah,
into a rotor. And for the love of God, if I needed any other evidence, his father is literally and figuratively James freaking Bond. Do I need any more evidence to show that Indiana Jones is the #1 character in the trilogy? Please. It's not even close. It's not even close.
It's very good stuff. In fact, my #1 is Indiana Jones.
Yeah,
so
it's not even. Come on.
I'll say what DJ said. That's all I gotta say about it. It's amazing, and I also think it's kind of crazy enough too, because I've actually never had Indiana Jones in a top 3 before. This is the first time, and what better top 3 than this one, right? And I will just echo everything you said. I mean, Raiders is pretty much a perfect film. The other two are still incredible, and really, Last Crusade is arguably the funniest of them. But yeah, he's so charming, he's so funny, he's a ladies' man, and his adventures are just some of the best you'll find around, minus #4. And that also kind of played into some of my criteria. DJ may acknowledge it. I will not. Indiana Jones 4 doesn't exist.
I don't want to.
It's a
I'm
dream.
being fair, damn it. It's not being fair. I don't want to. It's horrible.
I nearly walked out of the theater 10 minutes in when he flew 60 miles in a refrigerator. I nearly walked out. But
until that point, I was like, this is I'm digging it. I'm digging it. Wait a minute. How is he going to get out of this? Refrigerator. Okay. Well, maybe I'll cross my fingers. Shia LaBeouf. Okay. Maybe he's cool. Monkeys.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, maybe I can put a Shia LaBeouf. He's sword fighting ants.
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, that movie is terrible on all kinds of levels. But the first 3 are amazing, especially Raiders. That's probably my favorite. But they're all awesome. They're a lot of fun. So I just absolutely agree with you, DJ. Indiana Jones would be my #1 as well. All right, Jacob, did you have any honorable mentions?
Oh, honorable mentions. Well, I figure. I want to comment on DJ's possible honorable mentions. Probably going to be Jack Ryan.
There you go.
Because you love Harrison so much. Honorable mentions. I would like to put Batman and Gordon in there, but you want to talk about bad sequels. And I would like one that I do like. But I didn't put in my top 3 is Tony Stark and Jarvis, or Tony Stark, because he's got his own trilogy. I know
he does. Yes,
Marvel thing.
That's a good one.
And that's it.
All right. What about you, DJ?
Jacob just hit on it. My honorable mention. I mean, he missed my top 3 by a whisker. Was Tony Stark. The only reason I didn't give it to Tony Stark because I grew up on Blondie. But I mean, Tony Stark is freaking awesome. He's essentially, and I've said this on your show before, JD, the reason why Marvel Studios exists, period.
Yeah.
Or Robert Downey Jr. / Tony Stark, who is essentially the same person at this point. And other than him, it was Jason Bourne, because I'm a huge fan of the Bourne franchise. That his backstory, they've never really super fleshed it out. But I mean, those are characters I really, really love.
Well, you guys pretty much have all of mine. I have a few more that you guys didn't list, but just to list them off, I also had Tony Stark. I also had Jason Bourne. I know, Jacob, you sort of kind of mentioned Batman. I didn't have Batman, but I did have Joker from The Dark Knight. I think he is an incredible character regardless, but he was my #1 on the show last week, so I didn't want to include him here. I also had Marty McFly and Doc Brown as well. I also had John McClane from Die Hard 1 through 3. Everything after 3,
never happened. Never happened.
I actually like 3. It's the ones after 3 I don't really care for. And I also had Woody from Toy Story, and I also had Michael Corleone from The Godfather as well. But anyway, that's all that I had on my honorable mentions. Let us know how your picks stack up against ours. Again, email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com. Leave a comment on Facebook or Twitter, or hit us up on our website at InSessionFilm.com. All right, guys, let's talk about this week's poll.
It's real bad, okay? I don't like those numbers at all.
Just one poll? Those things aren't scientific.
Yes, they are. All this is science. This is math.
All right, for our poll question this week, we were inspired by Steve Carell's upcoming performance in Foxcatcher, and so we asked everyone out there, what is the best traumatic performance by a comedian? And we had Jim Carrey from Eternal Sunshine, Robin Williams from Good Will Hunting, Steve Martin from The Spanish Prisoner, Jerry Lewis from The King of Comedy, Bill Murray from Lost in Translation, Adam Sandler in Punch Drunk Love, Marlon Wayans for Requiem for a Dream, or a write-in option. You can write in whatever you wanted. Before we get to the poll results, though, I'd like to toss it to you guys first. Jacob, what would be your favorite dramatic performance by a comedian?
Well, first off, this touches on a long-standing opinion that I've had that comedians make the best dramatic actors.
Yep.
And secondly, my pick would probably be Eternal Sunshine, but I'm also a huge fanboy for Charlie Kaufman.
Interesting. It's a great movie. Yeah. What about you, DJ?
I talked about this with you on the extra film, JD. This should be called the Robin Williams Award. Good Will Hunting. That the scene with him just ripping Matt Damon in half at the lake in the park on the bench.
Yeah,
that is right there. I mean, he's so good in that. He has a lot of great dramatic performances, but I think that's his best one.
Yeah. No.
1 hour photo.
Yeah,
Awakenings is slept on. That is a slept on.
I agree. Yeah,
very, very good performance.
No, I would agree. There's several for Robin Williams. I obviously went with Good Will Hunting because that's the one that won him the Oscar. And I think another scene that's equally as good as the bench scene, at least for me, DJ, is the one where he's talking about his wife and how he met her. And freaking incredible.
And he ad-libbed it, which is funny.
Yeah, just insane. Yeah, that was very, very good stuff there. For my vote, I would probably go with Robin Williams as well, but very, very close for me would be Bill Murray in Lost in Translation. Loved his role there. And as for the results for this poll, far and away, it wasn't even close. With 57% of the vote, Robin Williams did win this poll. And in second place was actually our write-in option. We had several write-ins for other Robin Williams performances. There was a write-in for Eddie Murphy in Dreamgirls, and another slept-on movie that has actually made a top 3 of mine before that nobody talks about is Patton Oswalt's performance in Big Fan. Incredible movie and a great performance there by Patton Oswalt. And in third place was Bill Murray, Lost in Translation, at 19% of the vote. But we got a lot of great comments on social media as well as votes on the website, and we really do appreciate everyone that voted on the poll this week. All right, stay tuned. Coming up next, we're going to be doing a segment called InSession Film Showdown, and this is going to be a lot of fun, I think. I think there's going to be some heated arguments, some heated opinions. If you're a Christopher Nolan fan, fair warning. I'll just say.
Be warned. Be warned.
Just been warned. But even if you love him, don't leave. We'll explain. Just stay tuned. Just stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey guys, I just want to pause for a quick second to say a huge thank you to those that are supporting the show. If you want to help support us, there's a couple ways that you can do that. One, you can go and check out our bonus content at our website at InSessionFilm.com. They actually are free to listen to, but we do encourage and appreciate that small donation of 99 cents. If you'd rather do something else, we got our mostly new InSession Film store where you can get an InSession Film t-shirt, a mug, or tie. There's a bunch of cool stuff there that you can get. If there's an item that you'd like to get that you don't see is there, let us know, and we'll try to make that happen for you. And the last thing I want to toss out there real fast is audible.com. I love audiobooks. It's the way for me. My life is so busy and fast-paced that audible.com can really help out my book needs that I need in my life. And audibletrial.com/InSessionFilm is a great way to get those audiobooks and help us out at the same time. You'll get a free 30-day trial, a free audiobook. It goes back directly into supporting the show, and you're going to love what you see there. So no matter how you support us, even if it's just a subscription to iTunes, we really, really do appreciate your support.
Hi, this is Greg.
This is Chuck.
And this is Dan. And we are Talking in Circles. Because the world needs another podcast, we are here as Geekcast Radio's newest edition.
And as the title says, each week we get lost in conversation about a wide range of topics, including movies, comics, games, art, TV, and even occasionally sports.
We play games and discuss pivotal topics like who would win in a fight, the Kool-Aid Man or Tony the Tiger, and examine the hot-button issues of the world of geekdom.
We keep things fresh by taking timeless topics in new directions. We are simply three friends having a fun time talking about life's most fascinating foibles.
Stay connected with us every Tuesday on iTunes or at geekcastradio.com.
You're listening to the InSession Film Podcast. This is episode 92, and now we're going to be starting a new segment we are calling InSession Film Showdown.
This alpha predator of yours, Doctor, do you really think he has a chance?
The arrogance of man is thinking nature is in our control, and not the other way around. Let them fight.
All right, guys, for this segment, we are just going to pick a topic, and we are going to battle over it. Now, this was supposed to be my co-host and I, so this was set up for Blake and I to battle over a topic. But since he's gone, it's going to be DJ and I battling over something. And what we're going to be battling this week is we're going to be discussing which is the worst Christopher Nolan movie, Interstellar or The Dark Knight Rises.
You're going to get so much hate mail after this.
We absolutely are, because there's a lot of people that obviously loved Interstellar. It's a very polarizing film. There's a lot of people that like The Dark Knight Rises as well. On this show, though, we have talked quite a bit. On this show, though, we've talked quite a bit about how these two are definitely on the very bottom of the list for Christopher Nolan. So, like I said, if you hate Nolan, and you, especially if you love these films, you're probably going to hate this discussion, but I apologize in advance. That being said, DJ is going to argue as why The Dark Knight Rises is the worst Nolan film. I'm going to argue as to why Interstellar is the worst Nolan film. And after we get done presenting our arguments, Jacob is going to give his 2 cents and also decide which one he thinks is the worst. So to start, I'll toss it to you first, DJ. Lay it out for us. Why is The Dark Knight Rises the worst Nolan film?
Jacob, JD, people of the jury, Nolan fans, Nolan haters, The Dark Knight Rises is a film that has senioritis written all freaking over it. And actually, this film being Nolan's worst was a predictable inevitability. Chris Nolan was coming off arguably the best comic book movie ever made, doing an Oscar. He was coming off of the most talked about film in 10 years. On top of that, he had been working on perfecting the theoretical concepts and the script for your film, Mr. J.D. Duran, Interstellar, at the same time. How much do you think he possibly spent on The Dark Knight Rises, a franchise he kind of didn't really want to do anyway because he doesn't like comic books? Okay? Not much. A film called The Dark Knight Rises only shows the Dark Knight for 3 freaking times in the whole movie. The film starts off with a character predicated on never giving up, has already given up from a woman that looks like Maggie Gyllenhaal. A forced and rushed romantic subplot. All right? Batman gave up for Maggie Gyllenhaal. I'll repeat it. Batman gave up being a crime fighter for Maggie Gyllenhaal. Gyllenhaal, whatever her damn last name is. You know how much a forced romantic love, a subplot thrown in the middle. You know how much I love those, JD. A third act rushed to the point where a man fully recovers from a dislocated vertebrae by hanging from a rope for a month. All right? Several elements of this film's climax make no sense or never explained. How the hell did Bruce Wayne get back into town? We'll never know. What the hell was Talia's plan? We'll never know. How the heck did Bruce Wayne get plot info from his own hallucination? We'll never know. Okay? Bale wanted out, no one wanted out, and because of it, we got a sloppy end of a trilogy.
Well then, that is quite the argument. Well, I am going to argue for Interstellar, and here's the reason why. One, I guess it's kind of similar to what you were just talking about. This film is very overstuffed. It's very convoluted. The story is ridiculously contrived, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. As much as I like the technical aspects of this film, as much as I like the score, the story, it's not the high concepts here. It's the story that really drags this film down in some really terrible ways. I mean, we're, 20 minutes in, which I think it's a beautiful setup, but we're 20 minutes in, and they happen to stumble across NASA, which, by the way, is kind of set up and preluded by this bookshelf, which pretty much gives away the ending of the film. And I think you pretty much get that right away. He stumbles across NASA, and when he comes across NASA, which happens to be within driving distance of where he's at, by the way, that's convenient, they're like, oh, we're glad that you're here because we've always been wanting to talk to the best pilot we've ever had. I'm glad that you stumbled across us. Do you want to fly this thing in this big mission that we've been setting up for probably years to save the universe and save the world for us? Do you want to just happen to do that? Sure, why not? Okay, no. That is absurd and absolutely ridiculous and atrocious, and actually it's almost comical. Just absurd. And then the dialogue, once we get into space, felt so out of place. The Anne Hathaway character, the entire film up until this point, has been like, it's about the mission. It's about the mission. It's about saving people. We must make sacrifices. And then halfway through, she's like, oh, but I want to go visit my boyfriend on this other planet because love. It's about love now. That just made no sense to me. It was absolutely crazy how far off that dialogue was. As much as I want to buy into that concept, because I do like the idea of it, it just was so terribly written. Then we get into the cameo about halfway, 3/4 of the way through the film. The motivations of that character are absolutely absurd. Not to mention, his surname happens to be Man, and I can't even finish without laughing. It's so absurd. Man, and he represents the worst of what mankind is all about. I mean, that is just ridiculous. Then the film is so precedented on this relationship between Matthew McConaughey and his daughter Murph, right? It's about this. It's about my mistakes with her. It's this very emotional moment. I'm all about my daughter and getting back to her, and I need to get back to her. There's finally, spoiler alert, there's finally a reunion scene near the end of the film, which lasts 30 seconds. There is a baseball sequence that was the exact same length that happened 2 minutes before, and that's a throwaway scene. I mean, come on. You're going to build a whole movie on this reunion and them getting back to each other. Murph freezed herself for 2 years for this moment to happen, and it happens, and she's like, get the f*** out. I mean, that just doesn't make any sense to me at all. Like, no, I didn't buy that. The emotional beats in this film are not earned outside of the beginning. I'll give the first 20 minutes. Outside of that, they're not earned at all. The pacing was all over the place. Tonally, it was all over the place. And the story, as much as I want to like a lot of the other aspects of the film, and I do think the visuals are stunning, don't get me wrong, but the story is so absurd and one of the worst things I've ever seen, especially from Christopher Nolan, who, outside of the two films we're battling, I actually really love a lot of his other films. And I love the scripts of those films especially. I think they're really brilliant. But these last two, I mean, I don't know what the heck was going on in his mind. I think he was very much out of his place here, and this movie just fell flat on all levels. So Interstellar, I think, is the worst Nolan movie. At least in the Dark Knight Rises, I liked Bane outside of the ending of his character is ridiculous. I at least like Bane. There are at least some fun action sequences.
The ending of his character is ridiculous? You want to talk about an understatement.
Okay.
I'm with you, Jason. You know me. You know I've been alluding to the fact I have problems with Interstellar. But this argument just comes down to one thing. In a DC version, I will put it this way. It's ambition v. obligation. Ambition is Interstellar. I mean, for all as weird and ununderstandable as that movie kind of gets at sometimes, at least it's swinging for the fences. Dark Knight Rises is him just filling out his obligation to finish the trilogy. He didn't give a crap about finishing them. If he could have just said, screw it, I don't want to do it anymore, and go on to the next one, he would have. He didn't care. And you want to talk about Bane. This man is built up throughout the film as one of the most, badass characters. And to Nolan's credit, Bane is awesome. And then at the end of the movie, he's turned into a sniveling puppy dog who is shot off screen, not by Batman, but by Catwoman.
Yeah, that was pretty awful. That was pretty awful. Yeah, that was pretty bad.
Kidding me? Bane! Yeah. And the part you're talking about in Interstellar with the reunion between Murph and her father, I couldn't even hear it because freaking Hans Zimmer, I love him, is going crazy with the score at the time, so you don't even hear what they're saying.
To be fair, that's not Hans Zimmer. That's sound mixing. That's Nolan's thing.
Sound mixing, yes. Okay, fine, which is helping my point. That silly experimentation he did started in The Dark Knight Rises when he decided to make Bane's voice, which is now a cliched meme at this point, is horribly mixed, so it sounds like he's narrating every scene he's in instead of actually sounding like he's in the scene he's in. That started with The Dark Knight Rises. So you can blame the climax of Interstellar on the film that I am telling you is the worst Nolan film, because that...
And here's the thing, I don't really disagree with you a whole lot. For the sake of the game, I'll say there are at least some fun elements of The Dark Knight Rises. Some of the Batman aspects are at least fun for me. I like Michael Caine a lot better in The Dark Knight Rises than Interstellar. All right, let's hold off our little debate for a second because we need to get Jacob in on this. So we've kind of presented our arguments. I do feel like this is going to be slightly slanted a little bit, but that's okay. Jacob...
Going in, I didn't seem like I was ganging up.
Yeah. What do you think about this?
Okay, so obligation, ambition, all that. Let's just look at them as movies, okay?
Sure.
As you alluded to in Interstellar, you can tell what it was is when they were writing the script. Which, first off, on the subject of Nolan being bad, he needs to stop letting his brother write. I think we can agree.
Sure.
Please stop writing, Jonathan.
Because he also helped write these two movies.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the problems. With Interstellar, I think even from your points, you can see that they had some beats they wanted to hit, and they just very thinly strung them together. Mm-hmm. And looking at it from that aspect, to me, at least there are some moments, there are some scenes, there are some beats in Interstellar that I really liked. That you can almost make, if you could break those in and make a series of mini movies, that would be cool. There is no scene, there is no beat in Dark Knight Rises that is cool.
Well, I
wouldn't go that far.
I wouldn't go that far, but
I do like the fights between Batman and Bane. I think are awesome. As out of place as they can feel in that movie. And like I said, and like DJ explained, the ending of Bane is ridiculous. I did like the fights between them.
The ending of Bane, the whole movie is predicated on Batman breaking his back. I mean, that's why we all wanted to see it, because they were going to do Nightfall and blah, blah, blah. And he does it off camera. He's in frame. He has Batman up. He takes a step off camera, and then you just hear a crunch and see a wiggling black arm. Like, it's such... And so, no, I didn't find even that cool. I think as a concept, I think in both movies, in concept, there were characters that I liked. I liked the robots and concept in Interstellar, though they still confuse the shit out of me. I don't know how a walking piece of metal paper can do all that.
That was actually my favorite part of the whole movie. And maybe my only character that I liked.
I like the robots.
Tars was awesome.
Tars and Case. I can't say. I mean, Tars had the greatest lines, but there are some really good moments with Case as well. Like when he says Tars talks enough for the both of us.
Yeah. Sure.
Concept-wise, yeah, Bane's pretty great, except he does have some holes, like his respirator. And yeah, he turns into, as soon as you punch him in the nose or pull out those little things, he starts crying like a baby. But no, Interstellar.
That Batman doesn't figure out until the end, by the way. He doesn't figure that out till the third act of the film. He doesn't figure out, oh, maybe if I punch this guy in the face, he'll stop beating the living crap out of me.
I think what we learned from Interstellar is scientists are assholes.
And selfish. They don't want to save the world.
Is it weird that when they kept saying man, yeah, I wasn't expecting that cameo. I was expecting a chubby Asian dude. I don't know why.
That was absurd. Like, the writing of that was so over the top. It was ridiculous.
But at the same time, I liked the turn of that character. Because
But it makes no sense. There is no motivation behind it other than he is man. Like, it was about the symbolism, which is so over the top, as I said, but his motivation from a character standpoint doesn't play into the story. It doesn't make any sense at all. It only sets up that spinning sequence, which was awesome. I'll give Nolan that, but it was so forced. It was too contrived for me to enjoy from a story aspect. And this has so much dialogue. Like 2001 is a phenomenal film for a lot of different reasons. But what's great about what Kubrick did is there's not a ton of dialogue. It's purposely ambiguous. It's consistent all the way throughout, and it works for that film. And if Nolan, not to copy necessarily, but he there's so much exposition here, and there's so much dialogue that it has to hold up from a plot standpoint because of that, and it doesn't. Like, that turn, people can like it, I guess, if they want, but there's nothing to explain why he did it, why he chose it. There's no, like, the logic there is just, it's ridiculous to me.
He was lonely. It was his hypocrisy. The scientists the whole time were talking about how you got to look past your own needs and wants and look at the humanity as a whole and think from a species standpoint, not a personal standpoint. And yet at the end of the day, man, who was one of those people preaching that gospel, didn't.
and I can understand. Go ahead, DJ.
No, I was saying, I think we can all agree that when it comes to Jonathan Nolan, and I don't know how much influence either Nolan had, they're not really good at coming up with the plans. That's why the Joker works, because he doesn't really have a plan. So when you start making intricate plans, for his films, none of them work. What was man's plan? My plan is, so I'm going to set this TARS robot up that I have to explode, then go into a thing, a hibernation, and set out a beacon so somebody will come in here, and I gotta hope they wake me up first and not wake up the robot first and blow everybody up. And then it's like, it doesn't make any sense. What was Talia's plan? Her plan, or Bane's plan, or whoever the hell's plan it was to get a nuclear bomb to blow up Gotham, but we're gonna be on location with the trigger. And then I didn't understand. I don't understand any of the plans they make. Joker works because he didn't have a plan. I'm just going to shoot somebody and see what happens. That's why the Joker works. He doesn't really think about it. I'm going to kidnap this person and see what happens. Jonathan Nolan didn't have to break any brain cells to come up with that. When he starts breaking brain cells to come up with whatever the hell Bane and /Talia / Ra's al Ghul's ghost plan was, it makes no sense. When he's coming up with a plan, why the hell is trying to kill everybody? It comes out of nowhere. On top of the fact, why the hell is the other Batman's brother? Why is he evil all of a sudden? What happened there? We just need somebody bad. To put symmetry between. We need somebody on Earth who's also bad. So we'll just make it Casey Affleck.
Which was one of the best tweets that was sent out by Neil deGrasse Tyson. He said, "In another galaxy, through a wormhole on the other side of the universe, two men still get into a fist fight
for no reason.
For no reason, yeah." Like, I can understand what you're saying, Jacob, as far like from a concept level. I mean, I can get it, but I agree with DJ. The execution of that is ridiculous. It's very poor for me.
And also, too, as far as Dark Knight Rises apologists, because I've been screaming this the whole time. Whenever I bring up that Dark Knight Rises wasn't good, that he phoned it in, I love how everybody likes to retort with, well, after Heath Ledger died, he didn't really know what it... Go screw yourself, because he had how many years between Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises?
Yeah.
So he had enough time to, find a plan B. If plan A was we're going to do something else with Joker, well, you can't do that if you A, replace him, or B, scrap the idea. You've got plenty of people and plenty of other characters in a very rich Batman universe to choose from.
A universe that he does not care about. He said this in Batman Begins. He doesn't read comic books. He didn't care. I mean, look how they handled Robin. It's an 80-yard line from an extra off camera. That's how they introduce you to Joseph Gordon-Levitt being Robin. That's how much this man did not... When Dark Knight Rises happened, I was shocked he was still directing it, because I'm like, why? I know you don't like this stuff. You can't... The pressure to follow up The Dark Knight is almost insurmountable. Hand it off. Because I can tell you don't give a crap. He's writing your script, JD. He's writing your Interstellar script as he's filming that movie. So it's pretty much he's showing up on set and, the set, okay, his execution, the visuals, unparalleled. Nobody's going against him there. His execution when it comes to storytelling, it's almost, you can tell when he stops caring, especially in that movie.
So you know who's to blame then? Steven Spielberg, because he's the one that left Interstellar. Then Christopher Nolan had to pick it up, and then that's why that horse happened. It's all Steven Spielberg's fault.
He didn't have to pick it up.
I know, but he chose to. God you, Steven Spielberg.
How dare you besmirch the name of Steven Spielberg?
I'm just kidding.
How dare you, sir?
Just kidding. He probably read it too and was like, screw Jonathan Nolan. I'm out of here.
He was too busy working. He was too busy producing Transformers.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
He didn't have anything to do with that.
If Spielberg had kept with it, that twist at the end about who the ghost was would have stayed exactly what it said it was.
Yeah,
it would have been interdimensional aliens. Period.
Spielberg knows how to hit emotional notes. One criticism we always get from Christopher Nolan: one, he does not know really how to write women. Two, his emotional beats. I mean, I dug him in Inception.
I agree,
and I dug the one scene in Interstellar, but it's few and far between for me anyway. That I think that he hits them.
And that
Spielberg can do a father-daughter in his sleep with his eyes blindfolded on a horse. He knows how to do that backwards.
I mean, obviously, we don't know the details of when the Interstellar script was first written. We know it was written for Spielberg. And I agree with you. I think at the heart of the problems for Interstellar is that it was written for Spielberg. And I felt that all the way through. I mean, I knew that this much sentimentality and the way that it is written, it's Spielberg's territory. I agree, DJ. It is just not Christopher Nolan's thing. It works in Inception, and I think he does a good job there, but it's also not the focus the entire time. He hits it at the right times. This whole movie, speaking of Interstellar, was about emotion and mistakes and regret and all this other stuff that will bring up emotions, and it's just not something that was up his forte. He didn't know how to handle it, and ultimately that's why it falls flat, along with a lot of other issues, but I do think that is the heart of it in a lot of ways.
Everybody's complaining that Nolan can't, his dialogue doesn't make sense. Have you seen an interview by this guy? He's like half autistic. Like, I don't think he can, because he doesn't know how to write dialogue for himself in his life.
Possibly.
I think the secret culprit that we need to really get on is it's his brother. It's Jonathan.
Yes.
Because I still won't forgive him for Man of Steel. Dark Knight Rises. What? Interstellar. The third act, it's almost like you can see them put a sign up, we need a villain. And then it's the villain up here.
Yeah.
So, I would love to see him do either a script that does not require any emotion, like maybe a Bond film or something, or work with another writer. I would love to see that. But we'll never see that, because Christopher Nolan is essentially like one of the best directors working, thought by critics. So it's not going to be. My only problem with Christopher Nolan is people think he's like a master, and he's visually he very well may be. I just wish he would have worked on the story of The Dark Knight Rises more than he did, and he didn't. It's plainly obvious he did not care. He wanted to get the hell out of there as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I mean, obviously not a lot of people are going to feel the same way I do, and we talked about this off air. I actually love Nolan until The Dark Knight Rises. I love a lot of pretty much everything else he's done. I love The Prestige. I love Memento.
Prestige is awesome.
Yeah, it's incredible. I really like Batman Begins. I really like The Dark Knight. I mean, I've talked about those films a lot on this show. And I love Inception. I've talked about that a lot. Just these last two, for some whatever reason, he's just been distracted, or maybe you're right, DJ. He was preoccupied with Interstellar when he was finishing The Dark Knight Rises. Maybe he was on cocaine when he was doing Interstellar, and that's why that doesn't work. I mean, I don't know, but these last two films especially have felt incredibly pretentious. He's really losing his way, and I hope that he's able to find it back, because as much as we have dogged on him in this discussion, I really do like him overall. So I'm just hoping that he's able to get back into good graces, because these last two have just been atrocious. But
don't work with David S. Goyer anymore either.
Yeah.
Stay away from him too.
Exactly.
It's definitely talent without. He is talented. I mean, yeah, there are plenty. I mean, even if you hate these movies with us, and he doesn't make another good movie ever, we do know that he has made good movies, and so it's talent without focus. And yeah, he's probably so big at this point. He does seem like a smug ass that he doesn't listen to anybody who goes,
sure,
I don't think this is a good idea.
That's how Lucas fell off. Just remember, that's how Lucas. When you start not when you surround yourself with yes men, that's when you fall off. You got to have somebody there who's like, no, you need some pushback, or you're gonna follow your own hype, and you're gonna make mistakes. That's why I don't mind it when you have a great director working with a great writer. He doesn't have to be your brother. Have him work with the whole David Fincher, Aaron Sorkin situation. Two opposite people completely, but they work together well because there's pushback.
Exactly.
You get the pushback, you're fine. When he's working with his brother. If Nolan wants to put it in there, you think Jonathan Nolan's going to say no? He's going to put whatever the hell Christopher Nolan tells him to put in there.
And that's the thing. Like, I mean, I like that they work together as brothers. I mean, if me and my brother worked in the same industry, I would love to work with him. But you're right. When you work with your brother, while there's fun dynamics there from a family aspect, you need to have that pushback. That's where you can go from good ideas on paper to great execution. I agree with what Jacob said was absolutely perfect. There was nobody there going, "Oh, are you guys sure you want to do that?" Kind of doesn't make sense. It was just he's really lost that.
Not everybody can be the Coens, man.
Yeah.
Not everybody can be the Coens.
And they're a good example too, because if I'm not mistaken, and I'm probably completely wrong, so somebody correct me. I've heard they fight like all the time.
That makes sense. It would make sense.
At least there's some pushback.
Yeah,
there.
it would make
sense.
sense.
I want them to be fighting with each other, because that means you're going to get a better script that way, because they're going to be wanting to get it perfect. If it's just yes, sure, put that in too. Fine, Make the guy name man. Fine. Robots made of boxes. Cool. Bookcases. Awesome. It doesn't.
Sure.
Have pushback on certain things.
I agree.
To say, hey, you think we should shoot Bane with a bike off camera and then never mention him ever again? Somebody needs to say no. We need not that should not happen.
I agree. All right, guys. Well, for the sake of the show, let's move on a little bit. Jacob, any other final thoughts on this? My guess is you're pushing toward The Dark Knight Rises as the worst here, but lay out any other final thoughts for us.
Well, I think the last rant started with you asking me for final thoughts, so I don't really have any more. Other than I'm the arbitrator, I choose Dark Knight Rises is the worst.
I win again!
Alrighty.
Interstellar is much more watchable than Dark Knight Rises.
Okay, any other final thoughts, DJ?
Interstellar, you know this, JD. I have big problems with Interstellar. But, I mean, if I just... Seeing that Hans Zimmer almost did it for me. If I just turn off all the dialogue and I just listen to the score and watch the visuals, it's beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Dark Knight Rises has beautiful shots, but man, that is a character predicated on story. Batman's supposed to have great stories. And I don't know what the heck was going on in Dark Knight Rises' third act. I still don't know how Batman escaped the nuclear blast. I don't know. They won't tell me. I guess I'll have to shrug my shoulders. So, I mean, if I had to pick a bad, and it's funny, a bad Dark Knight Rises is better than like 80% of the movies in theaters anyway. So this is us nitpicking on a film that's probably better than most stuff we see. But it's got to be his worst film, easily.
Yeah, I mean, I've been arguing, obviously, for Interstellar for this discussion. And I will say The Dark Knight Rises is like right there. These films that kind of go back and forth. And really, in reality, if we're looking at it outside of this game and outside of this segment, I probably would put Interstellar above The Dark Knight Rises as well, just because, as you guys talked about, visually, it's amazing. And Hans Zimmer's score is maybe arguably my favorite of the year. I've listened to it on repeat if I'm not watching movies since it came out. So I absolutely love it. And another thing about The Dark Knight Rises too, you know, DJ, you've talked about him not necessarily being an actor's director. This has one of the worst death scenes I've ever seen in my life. Like the acting at the end.
My father's whack. He's done.
Oh my God! I mean, I almost laughed out loud in the theater. That was atrocious.
I did laugh out loud. I laughed out. Screamed out loud.
So bad.
I don't want this to die so bad. That's hilarious. Because it was bad. Yeah. It was a bad scene. With Marilyn Cotillard. So it's not like you're using like a no-name actress. She's really. Oh, and Nolan, sorry to interject. Get a sound mixer.
Yeah.
Get a sound mixer.
Yes.
A better. Please.
Well, here's the thing. I actually don't think it's the sound engineers. I was actually talking to my co-host Brennan about this. There is no sound engineer. Okay, and I've worked doing some sound engineer stuff at a very amateur level for a while. There are top-notch sound engineers that I've worked with here locally in Lexington that could handle that kind of stuff. Now, there is no one in Hollywood that Nolan can work with that is that poor. It is 1,000% an artistic choice, and that's what he was talking about with his comments over these last couple weeks, and it's just absurd. Like, especially in these kinds of movies where you're going to have a lot of dialogue because it's very plot-driven, you kind of need to hear what we're saying. And so let us hear what they're saying.
No, scripts and we don't need to hear anything. Just screw it.
You know where it would have worked?
Look, guys, my brother wrote it, so you don't want to.
Oh, that's the greatest thing.
It's like, oh man, Hans, you might have to turn up the volume on your thing really loud.
Yeah. It is. Let's get it clear, though. It is not the sound engineers. Those guys are top notch. I'm sure they're phenomenal. Otherwise, they would not be working in Hollywood at this level. It is Christopher Nolan being an idiot. That's really what it is. So,
then trust your sound engineer, Christopher Nolan. Get a sound engineer and trust him.
Yeah,
trust him.
Anyway, if you agree or disagree with what we're talking about with Christopher Nolan, let us know. You can hit us up on Facebook or Twitter. Email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com. Either way, we'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm guessing that there's going to be a lot of people that disagree with us with these two movies.
Screw you guys! Christopher Nolan's a freaking genius. He's never made a bad film ever.
And
keeps making bad ones. So
yeah. So it's very polarizing, these last two, for sure. But before we get out of here for this show, thanks, Jacob. Thanks, DJ, for joining me. It was great having you guys on the show this week.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, you can send all your hate mail to @SimpleTweeters, Christopher Nolan fans.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Real quick, Jacob, before we leave, one more time, how can we get a hold of you on the internet?
BCXradio.com has all the things you need to know. I even tell you how to subscribe and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, we're the podcast for the casual nerd. So if you are into geeky stuff, but you might not A, be up to date, B, be able to get and have other interests as well, then check us out.
One more time, DJ, give us the info and the lowdown on Simplistic Reviews.
Simplistic Reviews is where we talk about movies and TV shows and stuff in a more comedic fashion. And by comedic, I mean we rage about them most of the time. You can find us on simplisticreviews.net. You can find the show on iTunes under Simplistic Reviews. And as I said before, hate mail sent to @SimpleTweeters. It used to be SR Blogs, but JD.
I had to change it, yeah, because you're now simplisticreviews.net. Yeah, got to change it.
He's very forceful about it.
Yeah, I would definitely highly recommend both, though. Definitely go and check these guys out. Phenomenal work, guys. And that should do it for this week's show. Again, just a reminder to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/InSessionFilm. You can also follow us on Twitter at InSessionFilm and on Google Plus and YouTube as well. Just search InSession Film and sign up for our monthly newsletter. You can do that on Facebook by clicking the newsletter tab or on our site at InSessionFilm.com/newsletter. You can also check out our thoughts on a lot of the films we watched throughout the week on our Letterboxd page at letterboxd.com/InSessionFilm. And we do respond to every piece of email that we get. Again, you can hit us up InSessionFilm@gmail.com. Also, subscribe to us on iTunes and Stitcher. And while you're there on iTunes, if you would leave us a review, we would greatly appreciate it. But you can also find us on TuneIn Radio and SoundCloud as well. Or you can listen anytime on our website at InSessionFilm.com/listen-now. And as mentioned before, the InSession Film Podcast is supported by our super awesome listeners like you. Once again, if you want to help us, just go to our website at InSessionFilm.com, click on our bonus content tab in the main menu, and you can hear some awesome bonus content for just a small donation of 99 cents. You can check out the InSession Film store or just go to InSessionFilm.com/donate for a whole bunch of information there on how you can help us out. And one thing I would highly recommend is checking out our mobile app for just a one-time fee of $1.99. You can find the app on the Amazon Market for Android devices, the Windows 8 phone store for Windows devices, and the Podcast Box app for iOS devices. Now, those details are on the site at InSessionFilm.com/apps. Next week on the show, ideally, I'd like to do Foxcatcher. It's probably not going to hit in our area by then, so I think what we're going to end up doing for next week's show is we're going to review a small but pretty awesome horror film called The Babadook, which is out on VOD. You can definitely check that out, and I think that's what we're going to end up doing for the main show next week. As far as the extra film this week, we are not going to have an extra film this week because it is Thanksgiving. So I'm going to be on a cruise. I'm going to be in the Bahamas. I'm going to be avoiding the Michigan-Ohio State game because I do not want to watch that at all. So no extra film.
All right, cut.
So no extra film this week. But before we get out of here, Jacob, any final thoughts on anything before we leave?
Nope.
Good enough.
I feel like anything. I have plenty of thoughts, but I feel like I say anything which to make us go another hour.
I feel you. All right, DJ, any final thoughts for you, man?
I'm just going to make this short and sweet. Dr. Doom internet blogger? Question mark, exclamation point, angry face, angrier face, what the F? That's all I have to say.
Well, there you go. You never know. That could end up being a good move.
Don't get me started, JD. Don't get me freaking started, man.
I'm just saying, going open-minded. You never know.
Open-minded. Dr. Doom internet blogger. That's what I said. Just make sure you heard what I said. Okay, the words came out of my mouth.
Yeah. I know I gotta Google. What is that?
As far as final thoughts for me, I actually really enjoyed The Hunger Games. I would love to hear your thoughts if you, whether you agree or disagree with me. I really enjoyed Mockingjay. I thought it was a really fantastic step forward in that franchise. And as I mentioned earlier, if you get a chance to see Birdman or Whiplash or even Fury, if it's still in theaters around you, definitely go and check out those films. I've really had a fantastic time with the fall season. Look forward to Foxcatcher coming up here pretty soon, and also Inherent Vice. Pretty excited for that one as well. So I've had a fantastic year for film. Anyway, thanks again, guys, for joining me. Really appreciate you guys being on the show this week. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you guys next time on the InSession Film Podcast.
watched Mockingjay and then went to see Interstellar. I wanted to see Interstellar anyway because I saw the stuff popping up on my, nerd blogs and stuff about like Neil deGrasse Tyson's going to explain the ending of Interstellar.
Sure. Yeah.
He's going to explain the bookcase because.
Yeah, that's what I want to know.
I'm still waiting.
Even his explanation, I was like, and even while I was watching, I was like, so why is this the point? And so if it's not aliens who want you to talk to her, then why? Who chose this? Like,
For the entire version of our podcast, be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or on Stitcher, or check us out online at InSessionFilm.com.